All right. This section, I want to talk a little bit about the property management and property management as a function. I want you to realize that managing property in the state of Indiana requires a license unless you're employed by a licensed broker. And there are a couple buddies of mine that have companies out there that have unlicensed employees that manage property. All right. You still are going to be subjected to the same laws and license law as a person that's licensed if you're unlicensed. Now, I think everybody in here is actually licensed. That's why you're here. If you're not licensed, you still are going to be subjected to the same rules and regulations, okay? So, prohibited conduct. Obviously, it's the same rules that a real estate broker would have, all right? You cannot deny privileges to someone based on a protected class. You can't lie about a property not being available for rent. They have testers that will come in and test this out. And we're going to talk about testers here in a minute. You cannot give different amenities. You can't offer different contracts for people of different based on one of the 7 protected classes. So you can't use this contract for a white male and this contract for a Martian because that's a violation of the fair housing, all right? So all of the rules that we use in real estate for the buying and selling are the same rules that are used in property management when you go to lease property. Now, the important thing that I want to get through with you guys is the importance of consistent policies. All right? There are some consistent policies that you should create as the owner of a company or someone that's in charge of a property management office. Even if it's just one-man band, okay? Now, Donna, I know that you're a property manager. You manage your own properties, which theoretically you don't even need a license for. Are you going to ever manage for other people? Oh, okay, so you do manage for other people. Okay, well, then that's a whole different story. You do require a license unless someone... Now, anybody here not licensed? No, you guys are all licensed, okay? So it is possible for someone to not be licensed and still be in a property management function. Taught this class a couple months ago, and there were a couple unlicensed people in the course. They were hired by the owner of the company to sit in the office and manage properties. That's also an unlicensed requirement. So those are 2 slightly subtle differences I want you guys to understand. That you can be unlicensed and manage the owner's property, and we call that like Simon. All right? So Simon owns the mall over here. The people that work for Simon are unlicensed, but that's okay because they are employed by the owner of the mall, and the owner is exempt from having to have a license to manage his property. Now, there's another slightly different method, and I call it the Van Roy or Carl Van Roy, is if a person is managing property for someone else, they have to have a license, like Carl has a license. But anybody that's employed underneath of him can still manage property as long as they are supervised by Carl, the managing broker. So it's possible that there are property managers in here or that could be listening that may not be licensed, but it's okay as long as you're either A, managing the owner's property, or B, the owner of the management company is licensed and you're managing someone else's property, okay? Now, policies. It's important to have consistent policies, and this is where I got backtracked, I guess. Losing my mind. Even if you're a one-man band, you should have consistent policies. And one of the things that we did in our management company was come up with a policy for who we rent to. And what I mean by that is obviously all of our policies in the small print say, that we are not going to discriminate based on race, color, religion, national origin, sex, familial status. But we assign grading points to a person based on 5 or 6 different areas that was concerning to me. For instance, employment. If you worked there 2 years or more, you got 5 points. 1 year, you got 3 points. Less than 1 year, you got, actually it was 6 months to 1 year, you got 1 point. Less than 6 months, you got 0 points. So in time of employment, we've got rest and arrest. Have you ever been arrested? Those were point values. I'm trying to think. I should have brought this form up here. It was employment, income. You know, if you made 4 times the income, you got 5 points. So like if the rent was $1,000, if their monthly income was $4,000, they got 5 points. We got that 4 times because basically that's about 25%, and 25% is about 28%. And if you guys recognize that number, that is the magic number for a lot of conventional financing. Is they like the housing number to be 28% of a person's income. So, and then it was broken down. You know, if you made 3 to 4 times, you got this. If you made 2 times, you got this. Evictions. Have you ever been evicted in the last year? Was, you know, more than a year ago was 5 points. You know, 6 months was 3 points. Recently was 0 points. Any felonies, you got points. And then literally what we did is we just added points up so that someone could say, well, you know, they're an 18. That was one of the policies. We actually got called out on that policy. I had a property at 1424 West 14th Street, or 24th Street, so it was up by the Naval Academy up there, the old Bush Stadium. And we had 2 clients that applied for the property, and unfortunately the 2 clients were so vastly dichotomous that, you know, we had a female and a white male and African-American black lady. And when we did the scores, she was like a 13, he was like a 24. I mean, it wasn't even really close. And of course, her claim was that we discriminated against her because she was black. Actually went to a small claims court and had to justify, and we stood in front of the judge and showed him, hey, look, here's the scoring policy. And not only did we show him that scoring policy, we also showed him several other of our properties to show them that it was a consistent policy that we used throughout, and it wasn't just this one particular case. So that was something that I thank God I did, and you guys need to do that, is come up with some kind of consistent policies. You should have them written down and make sure that anybody has access to those policies so that they understand. You know, another thing would be, you know, application. Are you using application? And on that, you probably should. The easiest way is to eliminate all those questions. Don't ask their race. Don't ask their religion. Just, you know, name, social security number. Ask them, have you been evicted? You know, what's your income, job status? All of those things, once again, that would not even allow you to be able to go, oh, well, yeah, she's this nationality and that person's that religion, and yada, 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 yada. So on those procedures, or the rental procedures, make sure that you understand that a rental transaction is the same as a sale as far as the fair housing is concerned. You guys need to take it serious. You need to, especially if you're making a living, if this is a job, then you guys need to come up with that procedure for all your rental transactions and say, okay, here's the same application we're going to use. That application is going to then use this form grading policy, and here's our grading form. Here's how the grading form is based. You know, 0 to this, you get points. 0 to this, you get points. And then at the end, we're going to add up everybody. Now, here's the kicker to that. Consistent. Dude, be consistent. All right? Because the one time you're not consistent, you're going to get burned, or it's going to prove that you didn't have a policy. So what you don't want to do is go, okay, well, down in the hood, we're going to use this policy, but if it's something out in Center Grove, I trust everybody, we won't use it. That's what's going to get you in trouble, all right? Also, remember the familial status discrimination. Be careful. Be careful of protection. Make sure that the protection is truly aimed at children. aimed at the protection of children. And we covered that example last section. It's a very good example. The one about the swimming, no kids without an adult. That is a very strong policy that you can have in place. That is not discriminatory. But one that says no kids after 7 p.m. at night is very discriminatory, because that looks like you're making it aimed at allowing adults only, which might be a cool thing. And trust me, as somebody that's got 6 kids, there are plenty of places I would love to go that's adult only after a while. But you cannot do that kind of discrimination. Also, health and safety can help you out in that familial status, but just be careful when it comes to disability. Anytime that there is any units that's built with 4 or more, have separate rules. The Fair Housing Act covers all covered multifamily dwellings designed and constructed for occupancy after March the 13th of 1991. All right, so in buildings with 4 or more dwelling units and at least 1 elevator, all dwelling units and all public and common areas are subject to the Act's design and construction requirements. This is what we were talking about earlier. If you are managing a property that has 4 or more units and 1 elevator, then all the units have to be designed in construction to meet the Fair Housing's design and construction requirements. Now, we're not going to go over all of those design and requirements, but you can easily Google that and look for, the Fair Housing Act design and construction requirements. So about any property built after 91. Now, if the building has 4 or more units and there's no elevators, then all of the ground floor units and the public and common areas are subject to the design and construction requirements. Got it? So I know that I told you earlier that you still cannot not show someone or suggest that there's an upper level if there's no elevator because they're in a wheelchair. That's discriminatory in practice. But the design standards, if there's no elevator, only the ground floor units are required to meet the design standards, whereas if there's an elevator, then all the units have to meet the design standard, okay? Now, if it's single-family homes that you're renting, you have a slightly conditional difference. Maybe. Because if you're renting someone else's property and you're that third-party manager, once they bring in a realtor, which in essence one of you guys better be, then those exemptions go, okay? If there's questions about property management specifically and fair housing in the property management area, and you've got other questions, feel free to email me at help@myrealu.com, because sometimes there typically is a lot of questions with this, okay? Anything else? No? All right, we're going to come back and talk a little bit about Section 804C, which is the advertising section.